They were all sitting in my living room, in my house, on my furniture. When my mother looked me dead in the eyes and told me my savings didn't belong to me anymore, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there in the doorway with my coat still on, car keys in my hand, and thought, they have no idea what they just walked into. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. I grew up the oldest of three in a row house in Baltimore. My parents weren't bad people, not in the ways that make headlines. They didn't drink, they didn't disappear. They worked. My father drove for the City Transit Authority for 26 years. My mother kept the books part-time for a church in our neighborhood. What they were, though, was uneven. And by uneven, I mean the kind of family where one child carries the invisible tax of being dependable while the others get to stay soft. That child was me. My brother is 2 years younger. My sister is 4 years younger. By the time I was 12, I was making sure they did their homework, heating up dinner when my mother worked late, reminding my father about school forms that needed signing. I'm not saying I resented it entirely. I loved them. I still do. In the way you love people who are woven into you so early, you can't separate the love from the habit. But I learned something early. Being reliable in this family meant being invisible. The squeaky wheel got the oil. I was the wheel that never squeaked, so no one ever checked my pressure. I left for college on a partial scholarship and 2 jobs. Studied accounting, graduated, moved to DC, got a position at a mid-size firm, sent money home when my parents asked. And they asked more than I'd like to admit. Not constantly, not dramatically, just steadily. A car repair here. A gap in my mother's hours there, my brother's first month of rent when he moved out and came up short. I told myself it was fine. This is what families do. I met my husband Raymond at 28. He's an electrician, licensed, union, reliable in all the same quiet ways I am. We dated for 2 years, got married in a small ceremony at a botanical garden in Maryland. My parents cried. My sister was my maid of honor. My brother gave a toast that made everyone laugh. It felt like a turning point, like maybe now that I had my own life, my own household, the dynamic would shift a little. It didn't. What shifted was the ask. It got bigger. About a year after the wedding, my mother called with a proposal. She'd been talking to my father and my aunt, my father's sister, who I'll call my aunt because that's who she is and that's all she needs to be, and they'd come up with what my mother called a family investment fund. The idea was that contributing members would pool money monthly into a shared account, and when someone needed a significant purchase, a car, a down payment, a medical expense, the family could vote to release funds to them. My husband thought it was a terrible idea immediately. That's your money, not theirs, he said. The minute it goes into a joint account with multiple people on it, you've lost control of it. I told him he was being cynical. I said my family wasn't like that. I started contributing $800 a month. My parents contributed $200 between them, which was genuinely what they could do, and I understood that. My aunt contributed $150 sporadically. My brother contributed exactly twice in 3 years, then stopped, and no one said anything to him about it. My sister never contributed at all. She was getting on her feet, which is a phrase my family used for her for approximately the entire decade of her 20s. Over 4 years, I had put in right around $41,000. The total fund sat at about $48,000. The rest from my parents' and aunt's contributions, and in my head, separately, I had been building my own savings. Raymond and I had a house fund that was entirely separate, an account that only the two of us were on, and by last spring it held just over $112,000. We were ready. We'd found a row house in a neighborhood in DC that was starting to turn. Solid bones, good school district, and the offer we needed to make was $415,000 with $95,000 down. We were ready. My sister was not having a good year. She'd moved in with a man I had met twice. Someone I'll describe only as the kind of person who talks about building an empire while borrowing your phone charger because his is in the car. He'd convinced her to quit her job at the hospital, where she had been doing patient intake and making decent money with full benefits because he was about to launch something. I never got a clear answer on what the something was. Cryptocurrency adjacent, coaching adjacent. Whatever it was, it required her to be available full-time to support his vision. By February, they'd broken up. By March, my sister was back home with my parents, sleeping in her old bedroom, talking about needing a fresh start. By April, my mother was calling me about a condo. There was a new development near the Inner Harbor, unit starting at $310,000. My sister had toured one, fallen in love, decided it was the fresh start she needed. One problem, she had no down payment, no savings. And her credit had taken a hit because she and the empire builder had shared a credit card she hadn't known about until the collections call. My mother explained all of this to me on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner. I stirred the pot and listened and waited. We were thinking, my mother said, that the family fund could help her with the down payment. I asked how much of the fund she meant. All of it, my mother said. And we were hoping you and Raymond might consider what you have set aside as well. For family, I set down the spoon. Mom, I said, Raymond and I have been saving for 4 years. We have an offer on a house. We are under contract. There was a pause. Then my mother said, your sister needs this more than you do right now. You and Raymond are stable. She's struggling. I said I needed to think about it. I didn't think about it. I called my attorney. Here is something I have never told my family. I had been in contact with a real estate attorney named Okafor for about 6 months before any of this happened. Not because I anticipated this specific situation, but because when Raymond and I first started getting serious about buying, a colleague of mine whose family had gone through a property dispute told me to get proper counsel early and keep my assets documented and separate. Mr. Okafor had helped me set up a single-member LLC. I'll call it my holding company, through which Raymond and I plan to eventually hold investment properties. He'd also helped me understand the family fund situation in legal terms, which was not great. Any money in that shared account could be accessed by any named account holder, and the voting system we had was informal and entirely unenforceable. When I called him after my mother's proposal, he told me 2 things. First, I needed to remove my contributions from the family fund account as soon as possible, because if the other account holders decided to transfer those funds, I had no legal recourse once the money moved. Second, he reminded me of something I had nearly forgotten. 3 years ago, when my parents had faced a sudden tax lien on their home, a mess left over from a contractor they'd paid cash, who hadn't reported the income, they had been at risk of losing the house. They couldn't get a loan fast enough. Raymond and I had stepped in. But instead of giving them the money outright, Mr. Okafor had structured it differently at my request. My LLC had paid off the lien and in exchange had taken a deed of trust on the property. My parents knew the lien was gone. They had signed documents. What they apparently had not fully absorbed was what those documents meant: that my LLC held a secured interest in their home. They had, in effect, been living in a house that my company had a legal claim on for 3 years, making informal monthly payments to me that we'd called paying us back, and they had never once asked to see the title status. Mr. Okafor confirmed what I already suspected. If it came to it, I had leverage. Real leverage. I moved $38,000 out of the family fund the next morning. My documented contributions minus a buffer I left so as not to trigger immediate alarm. I moved it into an account my name only, separate from Raymond, separate from the LLC. I told Raymond what I had done. He said good. That was all. Then I waited to see what my family would do. They called a meeting. This is the part that still makes my chest tight when I think about it, not with hurt anymore, but with something closer to disbelief. They actually called a meeting. My mother called it a family conversation. She sent a message in the group chat on a Saturday asking if Raymond and I could come to my parents' house Sunday afternoon. She said it was important. She used a heart emoji. We went. My parents' living room was full. My mother and father were on the couch. My sister was in the armchair she has claimed as hers since she was 16. My aunt was there, which surprised me. She'd driven in from Philadelphia. My brother was on a folding chair that he'd brought in from the kitchen, which told me he'd known more people were coming than the couch could hold. His wife was not there, which I noted. Raymond sat next to me on the love seat. He held my hand, which he doesn't usually do in family settings. He knew. My father started. He said they had been talking as a family. He said they were worried about my sister. He said these were difficult times and family was supposed to show up for each other. My mother took over. She said she knew Raymond and I had worked hard. She said she was proud of us. She said this was not easy to ask. Then she asked. She said they had voted, her word, voted, and the family had decided that the right thing to do was to release the funds from the family account to help my sister with her down payment. All remaining funds. And they were asking Raymond and me to contribute an additional $55,000 from our personal savings toward the shortfall. The room was quiet when she finished. My sister was looking at her hands. My aunt was looking at the window. My brother was looking at his phone, which he put face down when my father cleared his throat. I looked at my mother, then at my father. You voted, I said. As a family. Raymond and I weren't in the room for the vote, I said. We knew how you'd vote, my mother said. And she said it not unkindly, which was almost worse, like she was just stating the weather. Raymond didn't say anything. He has learned over the years that in moments like this with my family, his speaking makes it about him instead of me, and it gives them something to redirect toward. He stayed quiet and kept his hand round mine. I asked my sister if she wanted to say anything. She looked up. There was something on her face, not guilt exactly, more like the look of someone who has talked themselves into believing they deserve something through enough repetition. I just need a chance to start over, she said. You guys are doing so well. I just need this one thing. One thing. $55,000 plus 4 years of fund contributions. I said, okay, I hear you. My mother exhaled. My aunt looked away from the window. I have one condition, I said. The room shifted. Something in my voice, I think. Raymond's hand tightened slightly on mine. I'll need you all to come with me to my attorney's office on Monday. Because if we're going to restructure financial agreements in this family, I want everything documented. Properly. My father frowned. Why do we need an attorney for a family matter? Because, I said, there are some things about the family's financial situation that I think everyone should understand before we make any decisions. Including you, Dad. He didn't like that. He opened his mouth to say something about trust, about family not needing lawyers to talk to each other, about how his parents had never needed any of this. I let him finish. Then I said, the house, Dad. Tell me what you know about who holds the deed of trust on this house.
Silence.
My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at me. My aunt had gone very still. The title company, my father said finally. And the bank. You paid off the bank when I settled the lien 3 years ago, I said. Do you remember what we signed at the closing of that settlement? He didn't answer. My mother's voice was careful when she spoke. What are you saying? I'm saying we should talk to Mr. Okafor on Monday, I said. All of us. Because there are documents with all of your signatures on them that describe exactly how this house is held, and I think it's important that everyone understands the situation before we start voting on how to spend $55,000. The meeting ended shortly after that, not dramatically. No one screamed. My father asked once, quietly, if what I was saying was what he thought I was saying. I said I thought Mr. Okafor could explain it better than I could. My mother asked if I had meant for this to happen the whole time. And I told her honestly that I had not meant for it to happen. I had hoped we would never be in a room like this. My sister left without saying goodbye to me. My aunt hugged me at the door, which surprised me, and whispered that she had told my mother this wasn't the right way to handle things. I believed her. In the car on the way home, Raymond didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "You okay?" I thought about it. "I think so," I said. Monday came. My parents showed up to Mr. Okafor's office looking like they hadn't slept well. My sister was there, which I hadn't expected. She sat in the corner chair with her coat still on the entire time. Mr. Okafor is a patient man. He explained the deed of trust in plain terms. He explained what it meant that my LLC held the secured interest. He explained that my parents had signed the documents 3 years ago, that they had had the opportunity to review them with independent counsel at the time, which they had not taken, a fact that was noted in the paperwork, and that the arrangement was entirely legal and on record at the county clerk's office. My father's jaw worked for a long moment. "So we've been living in your house," he said finally. "You've been living in your house," I said. "I've never had any intention of calling the debt. I still don't, as long as we can have an honest conversation about what this family is and isn't able to ask of me." My mother was crying quietly. The real kind, not the performance kind. I know the difference. My sister spoke from the corner. "Did you plan this?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was something more like exhausted. "Were you waiting for us to do something like this so you could?" "No," I said. The LLC structure was set up for investment purposes. The deed of trust was the cleanest way to handle the lien, and Mr. Okafor recommended it. I didn't know 3 years ago that we'd be sitting here. "But you knew yesterday," she said. I looked at her. "Yes, I knew yesterday." She nodded very slowly and looked at the window. "We didn't give my sister the money. What remained of it after my withdrawal stayed where it was. My parents asked, in the weeks that followed, if I would consider gifting them the house outright. I said no. I said the deed of trust could remain exactly as it was, interest-free, no pressure on repayment. For as long as they lived in that house and when they were ready to sell or transfer, we'd talk. My father took 3 weeks to stop being cold to me about it. My mother came around faster. She's practical in the end, my mother. My sister found a 1-bedroom apartment in a suburb north of the city. A rental, modest, manageable. She got her old job back at the hospital. The last time I saw her at Thanksgiving, she hugged me briefly in the kitchen and said she was doing okay. I said I was glad. I meant it. Raymond and I closed on the row house in DC in July. It needed work. The kitchen was a disaster. One bathroom had original tile from what I estimated was approximately 1987, and the backyard was mostly gravel and one confused rosebush. We've been fixing it slowly on weekends, the way you do when something is actually yours. The morning after we closed, I sat on the back steps with coffee while Raymond was somewhere inside measuring things he wanted to build. The yard was quiet. The rosebush, which I'd been skeptical of, had 3 blooms on it, small, pink, stubborn. I thought about my mother's face at the family meeting when I said I had a condition. The way the air changed, I didn't feel triumphant about it. I want to be clear about that. I didn't go into that room wanting to win. I went in knowing I had already protected myself, because no one else in that family was going to do it for me, and I had spent enough years being the wheel that no one checked. But I had checked myself. Long before anyone realized it was necessary. The rosebush had managed just fine on its own too, I noticed, with no one tending it. Some things root deep before anyone thinks to look. I finished my coffee and went back inside to help Raymond measure.